Have you ever wondered why certain people seem to be drawn to you so intensely, so inexplicably, as if they already knew you from another place or another existence? It's not just a matter of chemistry, nor chance, nor mere momentary synchronicity. According to Helena Blavatsky and other scholars of esotericism, there are invisible bonds and ties that connect souls on different levels, transcending the barriers of time and space. And today, in this gathering, we're going to deeply understand this idea that certain people come into our lives for reasons that go far beyond everyday comprehension. There is something greater, something that can be called a spiritual plan, destiny, karma, or the magnetic affinity between souls, which functions like a guiding thread, uniting existences. This can cause two people to recognize each other almost instantly in a type of recollection that everyday consciousness cannot properly explain. When Helena Blavatsky spoke of spiritual connection, she was referring to a realm far beyond the physical, far beyond what our five senses can perceive. For Blavatsky, there are no accidents in the encounters we experience throughout life. Everything is governed by cosmic laws, such as the law of karma, and by a network of energies that bring closer those who need to find each other again. Thus, it's not just our biology that determines who does or does not come into our lives. It's not merely an attraction based on personal preferences, physical appearance, or shared interests. Rather, there is an entire vibrational structure moving behind the scenes, uniting hearts and souls that have unfinished stories, pending lessons, or even shared missions to develop. We can call this a reunion of souls, spiritual bridges, or a hidden echo of past memories, something that awakens deep affinities. Over the centuries, countless mystics, philosophers, and spiritualists have studied this phenomenon. But Helena Blavatsky in particular highlighted the idea that everything in the universe is interconnected by invisible threads of energy. And when two people connect intensely, almost magically, whether it's in a romantic relationship, a great friendship, or even a family relationship full of lessons, it's a sign that these threads already existed. It's as if one soul recognizes the other, evoking recollections that do not manifest in immediate consciousness, but show up in sensations, intuitions, and uncontrollable feelings. Blavatsky lived in a context of profound spiritual quests, where many Eastern traditions were beginning to fuse with Western ideas. She spoke of karma as this universal law that establishes causes and consequences not only in this life, but also in past and future lives. Hence, if someone comes to you with unusual intensity, it might be because there are karmic issues, bonds of affection, or at times complicated matters that need to be resolved in this existence. In other words, there may be a storyline that began way back and now needs closure, continuity, or healing. That's why so many people say they feel an immediate recognition when they encounter certain individuals. We've all heard those stories of love at first sight or instant friendship that don't make sense in purely rational terms. However, from the esoteric perspective, that feeling is simply the result of the soul identifying an old companion on the journey, an attraction that goes beyond the physical plane, beyond mere temporary interests, can be called vibrational attraction. And this has a lot to do with the concept of magnetic affinity that Blavatsky mentioned. We all emit and receive fields of energy. These fields can resonate with other souls that are on the same frequency or that have something specific to share with us. If we observe life, we'll notice that at certain times, someone appears who seems to hold the keys to unlock emotional doors we didn't even know were closed. At other times, people show up who teach us tough but transformative lessons. And that's not random. It's part of a larger flow in which the law of karma acts as a subtle conductor, creating encounters that help us grow spiritually, even if that growth comes through pain or challenges. When we talk about soul memories, we're referring to this capacity to recognize in another being nuances that transcend our present perception. It's when you meet someone and feel such a strong connection that you begin to doubt the logic of the world. How can I feel so much affection for someone I've just met? You ask yourself, why does it seem like I've known this person for decades? These questions arise when spiritual attraction manifests intensely. Helena Blavatsky called this phenomenon the hidden echo of etheric memory. In theosophy, the etheric body would be one of the subtle layers that envelop a being, a sort of energetic mold that records memories of other dimensions of existence. Thus, when two people with a strong spiritual bond meet, these memories reverberate, producing indescribable sensations. We could even say that the soul awakens upon realizing that there is something there beyond the ordinary. You might have a déjà vu, dream about that person before meeting them again, or notice synchronicities that repeat themselves frequently. Sometimes, a single look is enough to sense that there is a shared mystery, a spark of recognition that cannot be explained in words. In many esoteric traditions, this type of spiritual recognition is viewed as an opportunity to work on an aspect that remained unresolved in a previous life, or to continue an evolution project that was interrupted at another time. In any case, the central idea is that these meetings do not happen by mere luck or coincidence. Life is more complex and intricate than we think. There are higher forces, or if you prefer, universal laws, that orchestrate and govern every reunion. And why is it that so often this intensity comes hand in hand with pain or major emotional turmoil? Frequently, profoundly spiritual relationships are not all flowers and sweet perfumes. On the contrary, they can bring shadows, insecurities, and old wounds to the surface. All this is part of the process of purification and learning. It's not uncommon for two people to meet again in this life to heal a hurt or a trauma that is inscribed in their spiritual records. Sometimes they need to learn about genuine love, about forgiveness, or maybe about the courage to walk away. The intensity is so great because at some level, the soul perceives that there is a purpose behind that relationship. And as Blavatsky used to say, nothing happens by chance in the life of a soul in evolution. Everything is the result of the magnetic attraction between causes and consequences. Think, for instance, about that situation where you felt an overpowering passion that, while it brought you ecstasy, also stirred up deep questions within. Perhaps you experienced it wondering, why does this person disturb me so much? Why do I feel so exposed, so vulnerable? From the spiritual perspective, this discomfort is a sign that something is surfacing to be healed and integrated. Maybe in another lifetime, you had a relationship of love and hate with that same soul, and now it's coming back so you both have the chance to understand, forgive, or reconcile. It could also be that this person brings qualities you need to develop. In many cases, intense relationships function as mirrors, reflecting parts of ourselves that we don't yet know or that we reject. What most enchants or bothers us in the other person often says a great deal about our own need for transformation. Recognizing a spiritual connection, therefore, is not just allowing yourself to be carried away by the enchantment, but also allowing yourself to look inward. Some signs may indicate that the encounter is not random. A clear feeling of immediate familiarity is one of them. You've just met someone, but you have a strong impression that you've been talking for ages. The emotions are so intense they defy logic, as if there were a direct bridge between hearts. Unusual synchronicities can also occur, such as dreaming about that person just before meeting them in an unlikely situation, or noticing multiple parallels in your life paths. Recurring dreams, symbols, or even repeating numbers can suggest that something bigger is unfolding. It's very common in this type of connection that both parties experience deep transformations after meeting. Sometimes, a brief period of contact is enough for you to feel that something inside you has changed, that something has opened or closed within you. A relationship or friendship that touches spiritual layers rarely leaves someone the way they were before. Blavatsky believed that the soul is always in transit and that significant encounters are part of the evolution plan. Thus, we can think of our energy as a spiritual magnet, vibrating at a certain pattern and attracting souls that somehow resonate with that frequency or have something to do with our path. This means that, consciously or unconsciously, we project signals that are perceived by those who need us or by those we need. This process is dynamic, because each person who arrives in your life also brings their own vibration, and there is a constant energy exchange. From this perspective, no one is a mere supporting character in our journey. Every individual who crosses our path offers a spark, an interference, a challenge, or a gift, sometimes all at once. And, if we observe closely, we'll notice that those who burst into our daily life, transforming our routine and feelings, generally play a significant role. They may teach us to love, to forgive, to overcome old fears, to discover hidden talents, or to deal with frustrations in a wiser way. The person may come as a companion in evolution, or, incredibly, as a tough test to be overcome. In both cases, there's something to be learned, and that learning resonates not only in this life, but in other dimensions of existence, aligning the individual story with a broader picture of spiritual growth. Naturally, we wonder if all this is just theory or a metaphorical discourse. But spiritual traditions invite us to test these laws in practice by observing how connections happen. How many times have you asked yourself, why did I run into that person on that day, in that improbable place? And from that encounter on, your life changed completely. Or else, why, after so much time without seeing this particular person, do they suddenly reappear? And our story takes on a new chapter. It's as if there were an invisible thread pulling the strings of destiny so something can manifest. Synchronicity, a concept also explored by Carl Jung, points to the existence of coincidences loaded with meaning, which can't be explained just by rationality. In spiritual terms, we can say that this meaning is at the core of soul reunions and karmic interactions. In that sense, it becomes important to see that if you are attracting someone who profoundly impacts you, there may be a shared mission, a purpose that goes beyond the notion of a conventional relationship. It could be a joint work, the creation of something new, or the healing of shared wounds. Sometimes you look back and realize that a chaotic relationship that caused you so much suffering was precisely what awakened you to a new life perspective. It led you to seek self-knowledge, to develop empathy, or to discover internal strengths you didn't know you had. Even in pain, there can be a component of spiritual evolution. Of course, we can't always see that while the turmoil is happening, but over time, wisdom is revealed. That's why Helena Blavatsky and other spiritual masters emphasized the role of self-knowledge. They said that by better understanding who we are at deeper levels, it becomes easier to identify these soul ties and why certain people appear on the scene. It's not about being stuck in the past or believing everything is predestined. It's about recognizing that there is a greater web of relationships and taking responsibility for the commitments we carry. The law of karma is not punitive, but educational. It shows that we are co-creators of our experiences and that we learn from each action, reaction, and encounter. If we are prepared, we can see each person who appears in our lives as a messenger, bringing us something essential. So the main question isn't, why did this happen to me, but rather, what can I learn from this situation? We can thus learn to recognize a spiritual connection by following certain clues. The clear feeling of having known someone for a long time, even without any factual memory. An intense emotion that appears for no apparent reason and resonates in your chest like a familiar old melody. Dreams that seem to anticipate or continue conversations with that person, and profound changes in your way of thinking and feeling after spending time with them. These signs point to something beyond mere chance. If you've ever experienced something like this, you know how overwhelming it can be. And at that moment, it's worth asking, what is this encounter asking me to transform within myself? What flame has been lit inside me that won't go out? Maybe it's the courage to love, despite your fear of suffering. Maybe it's the need to forgive someone who hurt you on another occasion, but who now returns with new possibilities for reconciliation. Or maybe it's the chance to recognize your own light, because that person sees qualities in you that you refuse to acknowledge. The strands of destiny are countless. And according to Blavatsky, they are all interconnected on levels that our rational mind can hardly grasp fully. But if we look with an awakened heart, We can have profound intuitions about why certain stories repeat themselves, why some reunions are so fleeting, and why others last long enough to change our entire course. The conclusion we can draw from all this is that our energy truly is a spiritual magnet. We are constantly in vibration, through our thoughts, our emotions, or even our broader state of being. And this vibration sends out signals that, in esoteric terms, can be perceived by those who share the same purpose or who need to make contact with us. At the same time, we also pick up on others' vibrations, creating a web of interrelationships that goes far beyond what we can see or physically touch. Hence the importance of cultivating positive states of consciousness, of striving for internal balance, because the more aware we become, the clearer and more constructive our spiritual connections become. An encounter between souls can be a moment of healing, expansion, awakening, or transformation, and being aware of this reality helps us experience every relationship as sacred, recognizing that we are not here by chance, nor are we alone on this journey. This understanding also invites us to look differently at the people who show up in our lives, especially those who provoke strong emotional reactions in us. Instead of labeling everything as a problem or as cruel fate, we can embrace the idea that there is something that needs resolving. If someone stirs up uncontrollable passion in you or an inexplicable anger, it may be worth reflecting. Could this relationship, no matter how challenging it is, be inviting me to grow? Could this intense connection actually be the catalyst for the internal changes I so badly needed? In many cases, viewing this process with a spiritual perspective frees us from unnecessary suffering and inspires us to seek paths of healing and understanding. The soul, in its wisdom, records everything it experiences, whether on conscious or unconscious levels. By opening ourselves to the possibility that we have already lived with certain people in other dimensions of time, we begin to regard our reunions with greater reverence. This does not mean succumbing to fatalism and thinking that everything is already predetermined. Rather, it means embracing the idea that we are multidimensional beings with stories unfolding in multiple chapters, and each chapter brings its protagonists and supporting characters, delivering lessons, loves, discord, new beginnings. In the end, we are all here to evolve and, above all, to learn to love in ever purer and more liberating ways. As Blavatsky used to say, we are souls in transit, touching and awakening one another. This phrase, freely inspired by theosophical thought, sums up the beauty of spiritual encounters. We are not isolated. We are in transit, traveling between planes, carrying legacies from other lives, and sowing seeds for those yet to come. Everyone who crosses our path brings a call to awaken something dormant. It may be a virtue, a talent, a desire for change, or even a pain that needs to be faced. If we pay attention, we sense this call in our own hearts. Often it sounds like an inner voice saying, "This meeting is special, pay attention. There's something here for you to learn about yourself and about the universe." So, when you reflect on why certain people enter your life so powerfully, remember that there is a spiritual plan behind it. It's not always a plan in the sense of a closed script, but rather an intelligence that connects souls and experiences, allowing for joint evolution. Thus, each relationship can be seen as a step on the ladder of expanding consciousness, even if at first it doesn't make sense or seems too painful. If you accept this point of view, you may discover that there are no definitive victims or perpetrators, but rather souls interpenetrating to play roles, learn lessons, settle emotional debts, build bridges of light, or sometimes bring about necessary breaks. In the end, everything is part of life's movement. If the message we've shared here has touched you on a deeper level, it's likely that your soul is ready to remember who you are, where you came from, and how this great web of spiritual connections works. So pause for a moment and think, who has recently entered your life? What kind of emotion did that person stir in you? Was it love, anger, instant friendship, repulsion, curiosity? And what have you done with these emotions? Try to see beyond appearances, beyond the surface of human behavior, and ask yourself what truly needs to be worked on within you in that encounter. Perhaps it's time to heal old wounds, practice empathy, forgive yourself and the other person. Or maybe it's time to discover a new path, a new partnership, or a new project that can only flourish because the two of you have re-encountered each other. Many people report that after experiencing intense spiritual connections, they start dreaming more, having premonitions, or even developing intuitive faculties that previously did not manifest. This happens because when the soul is activated by a reunion, certain dormant potentials begin to awaken. Blavatsky herself experienced phenomena that led her to explore occultism and theosophy, trying to understand how the subtle dimensions interconnect. Even today, her legacy inspires researchers of mysticism who seek to understand the mechanisms of the energies that connect us. Therefore, if you feel the urge to dive deeper into this universe, consider studying more about theosophical ideas or about Eastern traditions that speak of past lives and karma. It can be a rich path to better understand your relationships and yourself. However, remember that nothing replaces direct, personal experience. Reading about these topics may open doors, but it's in your daily life, in your relationships, that true wisdom emerges. Each encounter you have is an opportunity to practice compassion, patience, courage, and trust. And each missed connection or disappointment also teaches something about detachment, humility, and acceptance of the cycles of beginnings and endings. Even separations have spiritual value because in many cases they represent the conclusion of a lesson. The feeling of emptiness or longing that remains can be the soul digesting what was experienced and preparing itself for a new stage. That's why, when we say you don't attract people for no reason, we are talking about something very real and far-reaching. There is a subtle magnetism that emanates from your heart and resonates in kindred hearts, or in hearts that need you. Likewise, you are also attracted to people who have something to reveal to you, whether shadows or lights. It's a constant exchange of energy, like a cosmic dance in which we are all dancers and choreographers, often without realizing how the steps fit together. But looking back, we often realize that the pieces fit together perfectly, even if they seemed confusing or chaotic at first. So the question that remains is, what will you do from now on with this realization? Will you continue acting as if everything were mere chance? Or will you adopt a more conscious stance in your journey? Spiritual awakening does not mean controlling everything, but rather actively participating, responding to destiny's calls with greater wisdom and love. If a person has appeared in your life with great intensity, try to welcome that intensity. Explore the connection that presents itself, but without losing discernment. It's important to know that not every karmic encounter is meant to result in long-lasting relationships. Sometimes the intensity is precisely there to burn through a karma quickly, and then each one goes their own way. In other cases, the bond may be one of joint construction, lasting for much of this life. The key is to observe with the heart and seek to understand what each situation is telling you. If you've made it this far, comment 100%. That shows me your soul was ready to hear all this. If this message awakened something within you, it's because your soul recognizes this call. Have you ever felt a connection too strong to be explained? Share your story. It might be the key to someone else's awakening. Thank you for walking with me once again on this journey of light and reflection. May peace be in your heart. We'll meet again tomorrow with more wisdom and hope. Until tomorrow, dear soul.